One of my favorite instructors is Gordon Graham. One of the things that he uses as a prop is a tiny toy soldier, basically the kind that you get in a package that are green. And he uses it in his presentation uh, as a joke. But what's interesting, I asked him one day, I said, "Do you ever get tired after a presentation of all day? And when you get on a plane, you don't want to talk to anybody?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah." He said, "But I've got a solution to that." He said, "If I sit next to a guy who wants to talk the whole way back to Los Angeles, I pull out that toy soldier and I lean over and talk or whisper to the toy soldier and say, 'Ranger Joe, this person wants to talk with me. What should I do?'" He said the sheer terror on these people's faces makes that they will shut up the rest of the flight. That is xenophobia. When people act weird, when this behavior is strange, we're not used to it, we're not familiar with it, we emotionally react. And what we're going to talk about is that when you practice leadership, which is recognized by, I think, every human being intuitively. It means that you have a relationship with your people, you communicate with them, you deal with problems, you haven't forgotten where you come from. But when you actually do that, you'll get a very emotional reaction because leadership is so rare in a way when you start doing these things and you communicate and you deal with problems and you're acting weird. And the natural reaction is just like the passenger next to Gordon on the plane. Why are you doing this? This is uncomfortable, and it makes people upset. And what we're going to talk about is when we get promoted, relationships change, trust changes, and also the mission changes. And as a result of that, what we practice successfully operationally, we dealt with strangers on the street, we resolved issues, we communicated, we confronted people, we supported our brothers and sisters out there on the street or in the jail or wherever. That when we get promoted, that relationship dynamic changes. The second thing that changes is the mission. The operational mission was based on dealing with strangers out on the streets, resolving issues, not letting people get away with things. And we ran to the sound of the gun. We arrested people consistently. We didn't show favoritism. But when that's inside the building, we've not seen that done. We understand operationally that this is the way we do things, but inside the building, we do not have a very good legacy of practicing accountability, communication, and dealing with issues inside that building. And dramatically, the same behaviors and attitudes we used out on the streets as operational police officers, deputies, troopers, etc., is now different. And it's interesting that two leadership skills that operational people practice out on the street, and I've already mentioned them. One is communication. We will walk up to anybody and without hesitation, we will initiate communication with people. We will do it well, and we do it. And it's a skill that is very successfully practiced out on the streets and in the jail, etc. The other one is that we resolve issues. We show the courage enough to tell people what they don't want to hear. We never leave a problem unchallenged and unresolved. And then when, again, we come in the building, we're not seeing that. Why? Because things have changed. And we're going to talk about two major issues that have changed that bring out this xenophobia that was not present in our job out on the streets, but is now in the building. The one of them is relationships. When we're out on the streets, we're peers, we know each other, we work with each other every day, we're all on, quote, the same level, and we're unified by the mission, what we're trying to do, and we take care of each other. We're each other's brothers and sisters keeper. And as a result of that, there's no xenophobia. We run to the sound of the gun. We consistently perform our jobs. But once we get promoted, we're not one of them anymore. We're not a cop or a deputy or a trooper. We're a sergeant or lieutenant. And that affects both us personally and the people that we supervise. Let's talk about us. These people are no longer seen as one of the guys and gals we work with. They're now seen as somebody that, man, if they mess up, they're going to get me in trouble. They are the kind of the source of potential issue for you as a new supervisor. I think in a way they sense that you seem more detached. The other thing is they see you differently. When on the streets, they were willing to offer suggestions and accountability and say, well, why don't you try this? Now that you're over them, you're not one of their peers, you're their boss. And as a result of that, they don't tell you, hey, this is not really a good way to handle this or anything. And so we lose this accountability. They don't feel they have the right to tell us the truth about how we're doing. And so that whole dimension of the relationship has changed. And they don't know how to respond to us, and we don't necessarily know how to respond to them. I've got to mention this. Unfortunately, when we get promoted, we think we're special. I mean, we're one of only 14 people that got promoted to sergeant or lieutenant or whatever. And human nature believes that, I must be better than most people. And we supervise the most perceptive group of human beings when it comes to behavior and attitudes. And they see you think you're special, you think you're better than us. And that complicates that relationship and trust. And all relationships are based on trust, and we lose that in a significant way sometimes when we get promoted. They don't trust us, and we don't necessarily trust them. So what should we do about that? And I want to go ahead and hit the solution to that. These are still your brothers and sisters. You need to go out there and be with them. The way we get their trust back that we had operationally is intentionally and on a regular basis go out there and work with them in the jail. When we practice relational contact on a regular basis, we trust who we know and we distrust people we don't know. And when we sit in our office, we're going to lose our relationship with the operational people. And so we intentionally, aggressively spend time every day, if not every week, going out there and working with them and show them that we're not special. And it also reminds us we're not special, and it brings us back to the operational roots. And I believe with all my heart that if you do that, and I've seen it done multiple times, when you continue to go out there with them, you continue to help them, you continue to laugh and joke with them, they realize that you may be a sergeant and you may be a lieutenant, but you're still a cop or a deputy or a trooper, and you will overcome that natural xenophobia that they will feel towards you as a supervisor. And I want you to remember this: most of their supervisors have not communicated with them unless there's a problem, they need a favor, or you're their buddy. So when you show up, they're going to immediately be hesitant. And it's always interesting that when the leader starts trying to practice communication, there's this resistance like, am I in trouble? Why are you here? That shows this is not what they're used to when it comes to supervisors and managers. And you cannot let that inhibit your tendency to do that. And some sergeants give up with that. When they see this kind of hesitation and being uncomfortable and talking with you, what's the natural thing? Well, then we just stop coming. That is the last thing you need to do. Keep coming. And you can overcome this through relationships. And this is for your benefit too, because it reminds you you're not special, that you, again, are a cop or trooper or deputy who also happens to be a lieutenant. And that is the classic leader, a we person who's a servant. And you can overcome the operational resistance to you. There's a problem though. When you practice leadership, In the management culture, it's practice in the operational level, as I've already mentioned. We do deal with things, we communicate out on the street, but inside the building, we've not seen that among our supervisors and managers. And you can overcome that in trying to deal with your subordinates and your staff people. But who's going to get mad at you and upset with you is the management culture, because they've not this is not the way they've handled things. And what we're going to see is, when you practice leadership, practice communication, being out there with your people, they do something that immediately attracts the attention of other managers and supervisors. They like you, and that is a threat to them. I've seen this multiple times. One of my favorite stories, and it's a sad one, but it's still a very good illustration of how this changes, how managers observe us and interpret the fact that people like us. There was a lieutenant who was our best lieutenant at the police department. Everybody loved working for him. He was a wonderfully nice person. He was out there with us all the time. The female officers did a Valentine's card on February 14th, and they had best backup. Who do you want to see get out of the car if you're getting your butt kicked? Who's the funniest police officer? But they also had a category, best leader. And they picked this guy, this lieutenant. He was called in the office the next day by the chief and basically confronted and said, "You will never make captain as long as I'm here, because if your people like you're not doing your job." I've heard that consistently. I have multiple case studies. I remember when I came into an agency as a captain, the boss there asked me if I knew anybody working there. I said, "Well, I'd worked with, in a multi-agency narcotics squad, a sergeant." And he said, "Who was that?" And I mentioned him. He said, "I don't like him." I said, "Really?" Because this is one of the most likable, interpersonally gifted people I'd ever worked with. I said, "Why don't you like him?" He said, "His people like him. He's not doing his job." I just talked to a retired chief the other day. He said that he was called in and chewed out by the chief. And listen what the reason was. Everybody wants to come and transfer to your unit, and that's not good. Think about that everybody wants to work for this person, and that is a threat to the other managers. Why? Xenophobia, because they assume that everybody's doesn't like them. No one ever comes and initiates conversations with them as a captain and a lieutenant and a major. So you must be doing something wrong. Most importantly, you're doing something different. And there's jealousy and resentment, not confession. Well, maybe the people don't trust me and like me because I'm not out there. No, it is your fault, not theirs. And this is very common in the law enforcement management culture. Why? Because leadership is strange behavior. Most managers fail. And as a result of that, when someone actually communicates and has a good relationship with their people, it is a threat to the other managers. Classic xenophobia. And you're going to have to do it anyway. You're going to have to go out there and continue to communicate with your people. But I want to warn you that if you do that, you're going to get pushback. So, communication, you need to do it. It's important. It's the number one skill of the leader. In the end of the day, leadership is a relational issue, not a positional issue. And you will enjoy being a sergeant and lieutenant, etc. And I've seen chiefs even do this. But when you do it, there's going to be other people that are going to be mad at you. And you need to expect it, because it's coming. Thanks for joining us on the They to We Leadership podcast. If today's episode helped you think differently about management, take a moment to reflect and then apply it. Because real leadership isn't what you say, it's what you do next. And the real enemy is our pride and blindness on how we are really doing. Only with the help of others can we truly make an impact on those around us.